Welcome to part 2 of my RLCS season preview. Be sure to check out part 1 covering North America if you haven't already. Before I get started, let me just say that Europe is absolutely loaded with great teams, and there are about 24 that I could have included in this preview. And the fact that only 16 of them will be able to qualify for each event is kinda crazy. But with that being said, here are the teams that I've chosen for this video, and their timestamps. Again, they're ordered by my own power rankings, and those rankings are still arbitrary and inconsequential. Alright, enough intro, let's do this. The spring split of RLCS X was pretty weird for Europe, where multiple teams that had either just formed before the split or had not many good results before suddenly started to play like one of the top teams in the region. And of these teams, White Demons were probably the best example. Newcomer CRR and Dorito came together and brought in the experienced Tigre and immediately began to have great results, making top 8 and top 4 in the first 2 spring regionals. The honeymoon period didn't last too long though, as they only made top 16 in event 3 and didn't record a single win in the major. So to pick up some momentum again, they replaced Tigre with Zamway, and shortly thereafter got signed to FC Barcelona, giving them prime position to have the best esports decal, if the team ever gets one. CRR was the team's most aggressive player on offense, flashing some great speed mechanics, while Tigre was the most defensive player on the team. But with Zamway coming in, it's easy to see them switching to a full-on aggressive style that is popular with other full Spanish teams. With all the other teams that are around their level fighting for spots in the regionals, it's easy to see them missing out on a few of them, but when they qualify, there'll be a matchup that nobody can take lightly. Team Singularity was pretty much the definition of average last season. The good news is that they qualified for every regional except for one, so they are consistently playing at the top level. And their performance in the winter grid even helped them make that splits major. But the bad news is that they never managed to make a top 8, and their middle of the road performances gave them a middle of the road ranking, finishing 15th in the overall standings. On paper, this team looked to be pretty good, especially when they added Scrub Killer before the winter split. Breezy and Hibbs consistently showed great mechanical ability, and Scrub was supposed to come in and bring that team to the next level. Unfortunately, that never panned out, due to a lack of team chemistry and individual decision making, especially in regards to Scrub being far too defensive at times, which I'll go into more detail about later. But with Flame coming in to replace Scrub, I think that this team will be able to mesh a lot better on offense, and we'll see an uptick in their performances. Flame demonstrated very good passing ability last season with top blokes, especially when it came to infield passes feeding Cassio and Archie. And instead of sitting back conservatively on defense, he's used to playing defense in the midfield more aggressively, which I think will help out Breezy and Hibbs a ton when they rotate back from their offensive pushes. I think that this will be another team with consistent appearances at regional events, even having the potential to make a top 8 or 2 at some point in the season. After being among the first teams eliminated in their first 2 regional appearances during winter, Atlantide Wave came out looking like a brand new team later in the spring, making it to the top 8 2 different times, and they picked up some good wins over teams like Dignitas, Giants, and Solary. They also had some solid results over the offseason, including winning the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars League and coming in second to German Amigos in the BS Plus Community Open. Now they've signed with Williams Resolve, and they'll be looking to ensure that this success isn't just a one-time thing, but instead a foundation which they build upon to have more results just like these in the coming season. Just like many of the other European teams who began to make a name for themselves in the spring, this team was extremely inexperienced, with Prime and Radosin playing in only one regional before joining this team, and Sizen not playing in any. Radosin stood out as the team's best offensive threat, and was even brought up in some rumors as a potential target for teams looking to make a change, primarily Team Liquid. But sticking with this team instead ensures that they don't need to start from square one with a new teammate, and they can pick up right where they left off. Again, Europe is pretty stacked this season, so I wouldn't be surprised if they missed a couple events, but I still expect them to qualify for most of them, and to give a couple of top teams some serious scares when they do. Out of all the teams on my list, and perhaps all the teams in the region, the new Team Queso roster is by far the biggest unknown, featuring 3 players who are all very young and very new to the pro scene. Joyo, having just turned 15, joined Howard, not one person by the way, that's the name of their team, at the beginning of the spring, and showed some great speed mechanics, enough for me to feature him in my Breakout Players video. Rise also made his RLCS debut last season, where he appeared in at least one regional during fall, winter, and spring, despite playing on a different team for every split. He displayed a great nose for the ball, averaging 0.69 goals per game across the entire season, which goes up to 0.79 if you include qualifiers. And Vatira is the least experienced out of the 3, not having any experience in RLCS main events. But despite this, he's already shown that he's ready to play at the top level. In this team's most impressive showing in the offseason, Occitanie 2021, where they won the bracket beating FC Barcelona and sweeping through Team Vitality, Vatira had insane stats, averaging 1.5 goals and 1 assist over the 8 games, looking like an unstoppable force on offense. With this team's inexperience, I'm expecting them to improve rapidly as the season goes on, and have a consistent presence in this season's RLCS events, while picking up some great upsets along the way. German Amigos ended last season on a high note, where they qualified for the spring major by finishing second in that splits grid, and they've been on an absolute tear ever since. Over the course of the offseason, they've won 5 different tournaments, with 4 of them being B tier or better according to Liquipedia, and most of the time, they've done so in dominating fashion. Now, they're looking to bring all of that momentum into RLCS under the Evil Genius's banner. I think that Catalysm is without a doubt the star of this team, with his ability to control the pace of play of the ball, and being perfectly able to speed the play up or slow the play down at will, and also having the awareness to recognize when he needs to do either. Ivan is the least experienced player on this team, with his first RLCS experience coming with this team in spring. And he's proven to be just as good of a scorer as Catalysm, as they have both averaged .76 goals per game across all events since this team was formed. And Rizex is the solid veteran presence for this team, being the most experienced, first coming into the pro scene in Season 7 with Rival Series. Even with their dominance in the offseason, a lot of those wins came against teams considered to be either at or below their level. And while that show of consistency is good, trying to replicate that success against the BDSs and Vitalities of the world is a different story. But I think that this team can expect to be around the top 10. And with a little bit more growth, Worlds can be a very attainable goal for them. Team Liquid is going to be very interesting to watch this year. I went into a lot of detail about why I love Ronicky during my RLCS X All-Pro Teams video for Europe, but to summarize those thoughts, Ronicky is the best shooter in the world, and I'm not sure who second place would be, but I don't think they're all that close. And I've also talked about Ochronic before, where I highlighted his double flip reset, which has a strong case for goal of the year for all of last season. Ochronic is an incredibly talented young player with flashy mechanics, being able to beat defenders with the ball at will, and he's a great goal scorer in his own right, finishing 6th in Europe in goals per game. But the most intriguing aspect of this team is by far the return of Flakes to RLCS, after not appearing in any events during Season X. When the report first came out that Liquid was looking to potentially pick up Flakes for next season, the reaction to it was pretty mixed. But honestly, I think that he's a really good fit for the team as far as playstyle is concerned. Flakes is famous for his defensive style, and looking to slow the play down whenever he can, and this showed up in his pro play as well. During his last pro appearance during Season 9 with FC Barcelona, where he was also teamed up with Ronicky, Flakes was 2nd in the region in saves per game, and the team as a whole performed pretty well too, as they made it to the semifinals of that season's regional championship and even qualified for the World Championship. Well, if they had a World Championship that season. But with every player on Liquid having an area that is clearly their strength, as well as the history between Ronicky and Flakes, I think that they'll have no problem sliding into their roles as the team. And I think that this team organization will help them build great chemistry together. Truth be told, I'm very high on them. And even though they're low on my current power rankings, by season's end, I think they could be a top 8 team. Bold prediction? Maybe. But I believe in them. Team Endpoint had a pretty up and down season in RLCS X, but towards the end they started seeing a lot more downs than ups. They got off to a pretty good start in the fall split, making it to the grand finals in Event 3 and to the semifinals of the major. But after reaching that peak, they quickly came back down to earth. Endpoint only made the top 8 one more time for the rest of the entire season, and ended up in 10th place in the standings. So following the season, they replaced Demolition's expert Virtuoso with a young and inexperienced Seku. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, as far as playstyle is concerned, I know pretty much nothing about this guy. The only time I've seen him play was in the Gamers Without Borders tournament, where they lost 4 games to 1 against SK Gaming. And since that series was pretty one-sided, Seku really didn't get too many opportunities to show what he's capable of. But considering all of the options they could have gone with for this signing, choosing Seku shows some real confidence from Endpoint in his abilities, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. As for Endpoint's veterans, you have Relating Wave and Metsanors, 2 incredibly smart players and both phenomenal passers. I think their ability to control the ball themselves will make Seku's transition to RLCS level play much easier, since they're able to take on most of the playmaking burden for themselves. I think predicting another top 10 finish for this team is reasonable, but if Seku comes in and immediately becomes a game changer, they could go much higher than that. Last season, when they were under Galaxy Racer, this team was doing really well. After 2 splits, they were in 7th place in the standings, and only 10 points behind 6th, which would have given them a spot in the championships. But then the winter split ended, and they dropped EXO, and things kinda fell apart after that. Even at the time, the decision to drop EXO was a bit of a head scratcher. The team was doing well, and EXO was seen by many as their best player. He was definitely the team's biggest offensive threat, as he led the team in scoring, and was 4th in the entire region in goals per game. So going into the spring split, they brought in Bluey, and they had pretty poor results, including failing to qualify for Spring Regional 2 at all. They finished in 17th place for the spring split, which dropped their place in the overall rankings to 9th, now sitting at about 800 points below 6th. So after the season ended, Arju and Matane decided to make another move, this time replacing Bluey with Cash. I think that this is a great move for the team. Cash was a bit of a journeyman last season as he played for a couple of different teams, but at each stop, he consistently showed great mechanics and offensive ability, being 8th in goals per game throughout the season. And in fact, Cash and EXO have a lot of similarities on offense. So I think he'll have an easy time filling in the role that was vacated by Queso. With so many teams in the same tier as them vying for Worlds, they may be on the outside looking in for a coveted spot. But if Cash is able to step up offensively in the same way that Queso did, then this team could easily sneak their way in there. As long as they don't make another roster change before they get there. So while Queso's old team had a pretty rough end to the season, his new team didn't have that issue at all. In fact, out of all the teams that started to make a name for themselves during the spring split, this team was probably the best out of all of them. Queso joined forces with Tox and Yukio to form another leftover style team called Aether. Wait, Ether? Which was it?
Aether? Ether? What is it? It's pronounced Ether, but the team was calling it Aether. So we're like, well, team, what do you want? What does the team want to be called? We asked them, they said, we don't care. So it's up to you guys now. Chat wants to call it Aether.
All right, I'll take it. Aether made it all the way to the top 8 3 different times during the spring split, including going all the way to the grand finals of Event 3 and to the semifinals of the Major after getting picked up by SK Gaming, where they were only one game away from the grand finals. Just as he was with Galaxy Racer, Queso was the primary scorer for this team, leading them in scoring during the spring split. And Tox was the team's primary goal line defender, finishing 5th in saves per game during the split. They didn't play in too many broadcasted events during the offseason, with their most noteworthy appearance being the Gamers Without Borders tournament, where they beat Endpoint in one series and then lost to Team Singularity in the next round. But if they're able to continue the good form that they showed towards the end of the season, then I think SK have a good year ahead of them, and they'll be right in the thick of the race for a world spot. For my EU All-Pro Teams video, when I made the section about Nali, I talked a lot about his patience and how good he was at surveying the field from afar and waiting for the time where he could attack the ball most effectively. But one thing I didn't talk about was the question that was in my mind the whole time. Did he have this playstyle because he wanted to, or because he had to? Because honestly, with the way that Fel played, Nali didn't really have much of a choice, because the best way that I could describe Fel's playstyle is chaotic. He was constantly zooming around the field and putting as much pressure on the ball as he could. This made it dangerous for Nali to go for the ball, because with Fel going after it, anytime Nali tried to go, it could turn into a double commit and leave Devo out to dry. So instead, Nali would hang back and wait until he was sure the coast was clear to make a move on the ball. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing all the time, because Fel is a very good player, and he was able to make good plays on the ball pretty consistently, helping him lead the team in assists. But with Fel moving on to a new team, who also looked really good by the way, and Guild bringing in Bluey to replace him, Nali can expect to have more time with the ball in his possession, and get more opportunities to make plays with it. With 2/3 of the former Team Savage backing him up in Bluey and Devo, Guild comes into the season as a well-rounded team, with 3 players who are all comfortable with the ball in their possession, and all have the ability to make plays. I think they're going to finish no lower than 8th, and I'd be surprised if they missed out on Worlds. Ever since Scrubkiller left Vitality, his fans have been saying that his new team will be the one where he regains his World Championship form and reclaims his spot as one of the best players in the world. It happened when he went to MOUZ, Guild, and Singularity. He's had some decent results with these teams, but nothing that would stand out as a truly elite performance. Now he's on a Dignitas team with 2 young and talented players with all the potential in the world. And the Scrub fans are once again saying that this will be the team that he pops off with. And let me say something to you Scrub fans. I'm right there with you because I'm the biggest Scrub fan that I know. When it comes to evaluating Scrub and Dignitas as a whole, I love the theory that Johnny Boy has regarding Scrub, where he says that Scrub plays better individually when he's with teammates that he respects and trusts, which is something that he hasn't truly had since he left Vitality almost 2 years ago. Some people might expect this lack of trust in his teammates to show up by Scrub going for a bunch of solo plays and trying to score everything himself, but the truth is far from that, and it's actually something much more relatable. For those of you who play Rocket League yourselves, you know how when you try to solo queue 3s, you have no idea what your teammates are capable of or what they're going to try to do, so you just sit in goal and try to play as much defense as possible? Because you know if nothing else, you can rely on yourself to keep the ball out of the net, and you only leave the goal when you're absolutely sure that it's safe? Well, that basically describes Scrubkiller for much of RLCS X. He would play as much goal line defense as possible, which isn't entirely terrible given that Scrub is one of the best goal line defenders in the region and consistently makes crazy saves, but it was his lack of willingness to do much else that would really hurt his team offensively. This shows up in his stats, where he was second in the entire region in saves per game, but in the bottom 25 in goals and assists. And it was even worse in the fall split with Guild, where he was in the bottom 10 of these stats. This move to Dignitas already has proof that it'll be successful, with their top 3 finish in the We Play Invitational, where he was clearly more willing to involve himself on offense and look for positions to get the ball to his teammates. It actually started as a bad thing in their first match where they lost to Vitality, where his desire to get the ball to his teammates actually resulted in some pretty bad passes, and he seemed hesitant to take the ball for himself. But then later in the tournament, you see a complete change from him, where he was better with his decision making between passing the ball and taking it for himself. Here, after Joyous carries the ball downfield, he gets stopped by a defender and the ball rolls out to Scrub, with both of his teammates rotating back and K-Dop and Alpha double committing on the challenge. The two players have cut off his angle towards the goal, with K-Dop going high and Alpha going low. So instead, Scrub pops it straight up and off to the right, going behind both defenders. And with Fairy Peak stuck in goal with a low boost, Scrub has plenty of time and space to make his next move. He follows the ball up into the air and immediately gets his wheels on it for the flip reset. Then, he scoops the ball up, keeping it in the air and as far away from Fairy Peak as possible. Scrub isn't able to direct the ball all the way back on target for a shot, but he does hit the back wall, right outside of the goalpost, where it bounces into a perfect area for Jack to get the follow-up hit and shot. And for good measure, Scrub drives off the wall and backflips into Fairy Peak, getting the bump and making it basically impossible for Fairy to make the save. If Scrub is able to consistently make plays like this, while Jack and Joyous keep up their individual brilliance, then this team will be a force in Europe all season. The team formerly known as Magnifico burst onto the scene at the beginning of RLCS X by making it all the way to the top 4 of the first regional of the season in the fall. But things quickly fell off at that point, and they even failed to qualify for the last regional of that split. So after fall, they got picked up by Team Queso and they dropped Greasy in favor of VK Salem, and the Spanish Death Star was fully operational. They ended the regular season 6th in the standings and made it to the semifinals of the championships, beating Solary and Guild on the way. Now under the Vodafone Giants, they're looking to pick up right where they left off. They overwhelm teams with their ridiculous ball pressure, sort of reminiscent of G2 in North America, which is proven by Queso having the second most shots per game in the region behind only Team BDS. They're often associated with the typical Spanish style of play, which is defined by full-out speed and aggression, but they may not be as fast as you think, at least not in the literal sense. The closest to that mode would be VK Salen, as he led the entire region in boost used, but even in his case, he still had the slowest average speed on the team. For context, Atomic was actually in the bottom 10 in boost used, and his average speed was still slightly higher than Salen's. So the stats say that as a team, they have average speed. But given their reputation, the eye test says that they're incredibly fast, which I would agree with. When watching them, they look really fast. So where's the disconnect occurring? As it turns out, their apparent speed isn't a product of moving around the field really quickly, but instead, it's a result of always having a player near the ball and someone always being ready for the challenge. They aren't necessarily quick around the field, but they are always quick to the ball. All 3 players on this team were within the top 18 of shortest average distance to the ball. Only 2 other teams even had 2 players in the top 20. It's very similar to Mark by 8 style on BDS. His average speed isn't near the top of the leaderboards either, but he's always first to the ball when he needs to be. And the Giants are what I imagine it would look like if you would have 3 Mark by 8 clones all on the same team. At least one player is always on the ball, and they never give you a chance to relax when you have it. This aggression often results in double commits, but since at least one player usually gets a touch on the ball, it still disrupts the other team's possession, and it usually doesn't hurt the Giants too much. The only thing about this style is that it leaves them open to counterattacks, because since they like to be so close to the ball, if the opponents are able to break through their first line of defense, there isn't much support behind that. But given the pressure that this team maintains consistently as a result of the style, this seems like a trade-off they'll take every time. Let's take a look at this playstyle in action. After VK Salen swoops in from the midfield to take the ball away from K-Dop, the ball goes up into the air, and Atomic drives up the wall for the follow-up hit. Fairy Peak meets him up there for the 50, and the ball is sent into the back wall. VK Salen is waiting nearby and is immediately ready for the next hit, but he misreads the ball and doesn't get the touch. So now he loops around for a short rotation back to the ball, and this has created a bit of an awkward situation, because now you have both Demensa and VK Salen nearby, and they're both in a position to take the next hit. So which player do you think will go for it next? Well, if you guessed either one, you're right, because they both commit on the ball, most likely looking to get a pinch towards the goal, but their touch only sends the ball straight into Fairy Peak. But right out of the attempted pinch, VK Salen lands and immediately charges in again, forcing another 50 with Fairy Peak. Now Atomic comes in for the next touch, and with Fairy Peak flipping too far past the ball, Atomic is able to win the challenge and get the ball past the defense, and even gets a shot on target out of it. With all 3 Vitality players in the same area of the field, nobody's able to recover in time to make the save, and Atomic gets the goal. This goal was ugly, but it shows the team's tendency for constant ball pressure and how it pays off for them. And this pressure is the biggest reason why the Giants are able to play so well. The worst thing about Semper heading into the new season has to be the name change. Don't get me wrong, Semper Esports sounds cool, but the name Top Blokes? That's legendary, and I'm definitely going to miss it. As for the actual Rocket League team though, I think they're in a pretty good spot. They of course have Archie, the rookie do-it-all sensation for the team, who now has a full year of experience under his belt and will look to improve off his successful rookie campaign. And they've also made a roster change, bringing in Chaussette to replace Flame. I don't see this move as negative or positive on the surface, because I think the 2 players have similar ability and a somewhat similar playstyle. Both players spent the most time as farthest back on the field for their team, with Chaussette being first in the region in that stat as well. Chaussee also had way more saves per game than Flame, so if he maintains this hyper-defensive style, it may free Archie up to spend more time and energy on offense, as he was actually the player to lead the region in saves per game. And there's also a chance that Chaussee could regain his form from a couple years ago that had him in the conversation for the best player in the world, but whether or not that happens remains to be seen. But what I'm most excited for is another season of consistency from Casio, who has been severely underrated for a while now and deserves way more love. He's had great results on every team he's been a part of, with a real success starting in Season 7 and Season 8, where he made back-to-back World Championships. And in both seasons, he did it with teams who had just been promoted to RLCS that season, first with Triple Trouble alongside Ronicky and Tadpole, then doing it again with Veloce alongside Flame and Freaky. After being promoted from the rival series, these teams brought in Casio, and he immediately elevated them to a World Championship caliber team. And he hasn't slowed down since either, being a key part of the top bloke's success last season. Casio is the ultimate team player, and he does a little bit of everything to contribute to his team's success. Whether it's throwing a perfect infield pass, or playing midfield defense, or scoring himself. If there's something you need done, Casio's able to do it. He's able to recognize what he needs to do when he needs to do it. That awareness is invaluable and a key part of why he's so great. And I don't think that this team will have any problems qualifying for the World Championship. After playing for Dignitas in Season 9 and spending all of Season X with Oxygen/Solary, Astral is now on his third team in as many seasons, and looking to be part of a truly elite team for the first time since he left Dignitas. And going off of Casey's performance in the WePlay Invitational, where they took down Team BDS in the Grand Finals to win the whole thing, I'd say he's found that team. Astral has always been insanely mechanical and creative with the ball in his possession, and this is a big part of why I think he's the best passer in the region. This showed up in his stats in Season 9, where he was third in the region in assists per game, but that number dropped pretty significantly in Season X, where he fell all the way to 27th in the assist category. I don't think that this was a result of any drop in his ability, since I, and probably a lot of other people, think that he's near the top of the list for best players in the world. And he demonstrated his abilities often by pulling off incredibly mechanical aerial plays on the ball as often as possible. Rather, I think this drop was caused by a couple of factors relating to team issues. Sometimes, Astro would throw passes to try to set up teammates to score, but they would often be slow on the follow-up. And other times, a pass would be available, but Astro wouldn't go for it and instead take the shot himself. And if I had to guess, I'd say that he'd choose to do this because of a lack of trust in his teammates. So he's gone for a change of scenery, joining Karmine Corp with Itachi, who is also one of the best passers in the region, and he has the stats to back it up. He was first in the entire region in assists per game, showing incredible command of the ball and awareness on offense, consistently hitting teammates with perfect passes to get them easier looks on goal. And finally, there's Stake, who I was underestimating heading into the WePlay Invitational. He was in the top 20 in goals per game, while only being near the middle of the pack in assists during RLCS X. So I assumed that he would be the primary target of scoring opportunities that were set up by Astral and Itachi, and he would look to play cleanup on defense whenever needed. But during their run in the WePlay Invitational, he showed great playmaking as well, having nearly as many assists as his teammates. While I still expect most of the scoring chances to be created by either Astral or Itachi, and for those two to spend most of their time on ball moving forward, Stake showed that if you give him too much space trying to account for his teammates, he's more than capable of making you pay as well. This play starts off with Astral making a save off Mark's shot that came from Monkey Moon's infield pass, and then Astral blocks Monkey Moon's next pass to Extra, which sends the ball down to the other side of the field. As the ball rolls down there, Monkey Moon is closer to it than Itachi, but as he's rotating back, he stays on the ground to path over boost pads and refill his tank to prepare for Casey's next offensive push. But meanwhile, Itachi has already taken flight to meet the ball on the back wall, and angles his car to get the perfect hit, sending the ball downwards and infield so it goes right in front of the net, while keeping it far enough off the back wall so Monkey Moon can't reach it. Finally, Stake comes in and takes a perfect shot, putting the ball right under the crossbar and off to the right side of the goal. With playmakers that are this good on their team, I think that Casey will be in the running for the top spot in Europe all season long. After coming in second to Dignitas in the Season 9 Regional Championship, and that same Dignitas team losing their best player in Astral before the start of Season X, Vitality came in the last season as the favorite to dominate the region and reclaim their crown as Europe's best team, which they nearly lived up to, had it not been for those pesky kids on BDS. BDS and Vitality went against each other in 14 different series and main events over the course of last season, and BDS dominated the matchup, winning 11 series to Vitality's 3. But unluckily for BDS, 2 of those wins came for Vitality in the biggest match of the season, in the grand final of the championship, which saw them reach a level of dominance that they hadn't seen all season and take home the crown as European champions, despite falling behind BDS for essentially the entire season. Even with their consistent losses to BDS, Vitality still had a really strong regular season for themselves compared to the rest of Europe, winning 1 event and finishing second in overall standings. And at the beginning of the season, they saw themselves consistently placing high in the events, but towards the end, this consistency started to wane a bit. They failed to make it to the top 8 in 3 different events, including missing top 8 in back-to-back regionals in the second and third events of the spring split. And they lost in the quarterfinals of that split's major to Guild, their first time getting knocked out before the grand finals in a major. Vitality has a reputation of letting their performance slip when their motivation drops, and this slump that they had towards the end of the season stands as proof of this. Because after they met up in France and started boot camping together for the championships, they came out looking like a brand new team, and yet they looked like the exact same team everyone expected them to be. K-Dop was the clinical and devastating striker, Alpha 54 was the game-breaking mechanical beast with the ball, and Fairy Peak was the unmovable force on defense, while still making his presence felt in every area of the field. With Lance coming back this season, giving them a chance to win trophies on a true world stage again, motivation won't be an issue for this Vitality team this season, and I'm expecting them to be at their best all year. These plays from the championship give us a glance at how all 3 players on Vitality look when they're in form. After the pinch on the wall between K-Dop and Extra, the ball bounces out to the middle of the field where Fairy Peak has it lined up. But instead of immediately looking to take a shot, he waits for the ball to come down to him, which is a great decision, because all 3 BDS players are near the net, so any shot that Fairy takes is likely to be saved. And waiting for the ball to come down to him lets him take advantage of all the space that is left open in front of the goal. When Fairy takes his touch, instead of shooting, he sends the ball off to his right, which avoids Mark, who is now charged in for the challenge, and sets up a perfect pass to K-Dop, who stayed in the play after the initial pinch. K-Dop jumps up and hits a perfect shot that goes into the top right of the goal. And this second play is just another reminder that Alpha is one of the best players in the world. After Mark's fake challenge, Alpha gets a soft flick on the ball, which gets it going towards the BDS half quickly, but also keeps the ball close enough for him to follow up on it. He grabs the corner boost and hits the ball up into the ceiling, then flies up there himself to get a ceiling reset. After the reset, he immediately jumps off, hitting the ball as he does so, sending it flying over the BDS goal. He boosts down to keep up with it, and flips his car right side up as he lines up the read. Once he's in position for the shot, he dodges into the ball, making contact with it right as it clears the crossbar. None of the defenders can keep up with him, and the ball goes into their net, finishing off yet another ridiculous solo play for Alpha. Truth be told, there isn't much more to say about BDS that hasn't already been said, especially since I've already talked about each player individually from my All Pro Teams video. But to summarize, their offense is extremely good. They led the region in goals per game and shots per game. Their pressure was unrelenting, and if BDS got the ball in the other team's half, they'd be lucky to get it out of there before it was in the back of their net. And for as good as their offense was, their defense was probably even better, as they allowed the fewest goals and the fewest shots from their opponents. And there are many aspects of this great defense, first of which being that the best defense is a good offense. They maintain offensive pressure so often and for so long that they don't even need to play much defense in the first place. But when they do play defense, they do it to perfection, with their great organization and execution. Once BDS loses the ball, you can expect Mark by 8 to immediately challenge, disrupting the opponent's offense before it gets started. Then Extra plays shadow defense to buy time for Monkey Moon to rotate back to goal and play goal line defense. Since BDS hasn't played a LAN event together yet, I think they may have a shaky performance in the fall major, as they adjust to the new environment and higher stakes that comes with international offline competition. But by the time the World Championship comes around, this team will most likely have played 3 different LANs by then. And I think that they'll have enough offline experience at that point to come into the World Championship as the favorite to win the whole thing. Let's take a look at one more highlight before we go, where BDS shows how they suffocate the opposition. The play starts with Bluey attempting to clear the ball, but Extra is waiting in his path to send it right back. Extra hits the ball high and to the right to serve as a pass to Monkey Moon, who gets a touch to send the ball to the backboard. It bounces off the curve between the wall and the ceiling and drops downwards towards Extra, who takes a shot that goes wide. While Devo tries to line up the next touch, Mark is already there to take the ball away from him. Nolly is next to have a chance to clear the ball, but Monkey Moon is already rotated back to get into a position to stop it, and with his touch, he gives an infield pass to Extra. Extra's hit is blocked by Devo, and the ball ricochets off the ceiling back to the ground, where Monkey Moon now has room to work with it after rotating back into the play. He gets a bit of a heavy first touch towards the goal, but as Bluey comes out to clear it, Monkey Moon drives to the outside of the ball, blocking the potential clear angle. He dominates the 50, and even gets another fortunate touch as the ball bounces off the wall, with the follow through on his flip, sending it right into the middle of the field, where Extra can come in and score a routine goal. If you start playing defense against BDS, you might as well get comfortable, because you're going to be there for a long time. After 2 videos, 32 teams, almost an hour of combined video runtime, and over 14,000 words of script, I'm all done with my RLCS season preview. It's cool to take a broad look at all the teams, but I'm more excited to focus on specific teams and matchups for my future videos, which I'll start doing next time, where I talk about someone. Not really sure who that'll be yet. I'm open to suggestions, so leave a comment if you have anyone in mind. But until next time, thanks for watching.